can I convince you that the most chilling attack on free speech recently wasn't the assassination of Charlie Kirk necessarily? Murdering someone while debating people who disagree with him, literally, he's just having discussion in person like we're supposed to do. It's undoubtedly an attack on Americans' First Amendment rights. It's going to chill free speech, and it's going to result in Americans thinking twice about expressing their opinion, especially in public. But I would argue that so do Pam Bondi's words.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
Now, before you angrily start commenting about the interview in no way being comparable to an assassination, consider this. The very nature of our government is that the state has a monopoly on violence because every law they pass at some point is going to have to be enforced with violent force. So when the Attorney General of the United States says, we will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, we should pay very close attention because Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, with Trump at the head, have exponentially more power than any lunatic with a gun has. This is not some sort of slip up. She's tried to correct what she was trying to say, but I think she meant this. She's imitating Donald Trump after all. She followed up with this.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society.
Pam, you're just wrong. There is no such thing legally as hate speech in the United States. There is libel, there is slander, there is incitement. But the Supreme Court has said over and over again that speech is speech and cannot be restricted by the state. This used to be an argument that I had with people on the left of me, but if you consider yourself even remotely conservative and a defender of free speech, maybe it's time to admit that Trump and any Republican spewing this kind of nonsense does not share your high regard for the First Amendment. Hate speech is free speech. If we don't allow things to be said that we disagree with or we're even disgusted by, then we don't really have a First Amendment that protects free speech. Protecting only the speech you like is not defending free speech. The Supreme Court's most famous free speech decisions involved actual Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan. Don't we all agree that there aren't two organizations more hateful than those two? I think most of the country would agree that their opinions are disgusting and possibly even evil. I certainly think so. And in this case, the majority would absolutely be correct, right? But the Supreme Court protected both groups' speech, and not because they agreed with it, but because they saw a danger in allowing the government to decide which speech qualifies as protected. But you say free speech isn't without limitations, and you're absolutely correct. In Brandenburg versus Ohio, they said the limits on speech required a two-pronged test. One, speech can be prohibited if it's directed at inciting or producing imminent lawless action. And two, it is likely to incite and produce such action. And in that Skokie case that involved Nazis publicly marching in a predominantly Jewish community, I mean, that's pretty hateful, I think we'd agree. The Supreme Court specifically stated that even speech that's hateful, offensive, or repugnant is protected, that the government cannot restrict speech based on the potential for a hostile or violent reaction to the speaker. The government must protect that speaker and their right to say what they feel, even if we all disagree with it. Perhaps the defense of Pam Bondi's idiotic statements is that she's caught up in the moment following a very shocking assassination of someone the administration was very close to. I totally understand that. And I could maybe write these statements off as sort of one-off emotional reactions if they were the only ones I'd ever seen from her in the administration. But this administration has been attacking the First Amendment constantly in both terms, though it has ramped up considerably in his second term so far. Just a few examples. Trump has sued ABC, Paramount, New York Times, The Washington Post, all of whom absolutely no lawyer would think wasn't within their First Amendment rights. This is his version of lawfare. The lawsuit is the punishment, forcing companies to settle even when they've done nothing wrong. He's threatened ABC, NBC, and CBS with revoking their broadcast licenses because they say mean things about him. That's it. He has called for denaturalizing and jailing protesters who burn the U.S. flag, even attempting to make it illegal with an executive order that does no such thing. It's like he wants people to burn the flag so he can send people in to punish them. I mean, for God's sake, he sued the Des Moines Register for publishing a poll he didn't like in the last election. He sued Facebook for restricting his account in 2020. Facebook is a private company and can restrict anyone they want legally, but They settled anyway. That's the pattern here. It's like you threaten, you sue, they settle. The FCC investigated a local news station in California for revealing the location of immigration enforcement agents. The administration released a list of hundreds of words that aren't allowed to be used in government reports or communications, resulting in countless government records disappearing for fear of being not in line with the new speech codes. Yeah, so we've got now conservative, allegedly, speech codes, something that we've made fun of the left for forever. Just this week, the FCC chair Brendan Carr went on a podcast threatening to revoke ABC's broadcast license for what Jimmy Kimmel said in the wake of Kirk's assassination. Jimmy Kimmel, by the way, is a comedian. This is not the news on ABC. And I even agree with Trump that he's not a very good comedian. But if ABC thought what he said was out of line, they can absolutely cancel his show or fire him. But that's not how this exactly happened. The Trump administration is bullying people and companies because what they're saying isn't flattering to him. It's not even hate speech. To even pretend this is about so-called hate speech is a ruse. Carr, that FCC director, also said, "The View is now in the crosshairs of this administration. There is not a dumber progressive show than The View on television right now. Just, there is not one. But what have they done that justifies the government threatening them? Have they hurt their feelings, I guess? We used to make fun of progressives on the left for being snowflakes. But who are the snowflakes now?" I think it's completely fair to say that the left doesn't believe in free speech either. We see evidence of it all the time. During the 2024 campaign, VP candidate Tim Walz said nearly the exact same thing about hate speech that Pam Bondi did this week.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
And I appropriately called it out at the time. We are used to the left claiming that words are violence, and then we see them downplaying actual violence during things like the Black Lives Matter riots as a form of legitimate free speech, or the Luigi Mangione murder of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, or the most recent attack on Charlie Kirk. We see that those are legitimate forms of speech, but words are violence. It makes no sense, and we've been rightly calling that out. If words don't rise to the legal definition of incitement, they are just words, and they are fully protected by the First Amendment. They are not violence. But now, on the right, we are the defenders of free speech. These leaders aren't alone in their hostility to the First Amendment. FIRE released its annual speech polling the day before Kirk's murder, and it found that 34% of college students found it acceptable to use violence to stop a speaker. That is up from 20% in 2020. And just look at the demographics. Those on the left have always been more accepting of violence to stop speech. But conservatives, libertarians, Republicans in general, they've all increased in believing that violence is okay to stop speech. So these politicians seem to just be maybe going along with the crowd. Zoom out to general American citizenry. And according to the most recent FIRE poll, 50% of the country agree to some degree with the statement, the First Amendment goes too far in the rights it guarantees. In a Pew poll recently, 55% of people agreed that the government should take steps to restrict false information online, even if it limits freedom of information. But before you think that, consider this. During COVID, the government considered all sorts of information false and worked to restrict it. For example, it labeled theories about the virus possibly having been a result of a lab leak in China as misinformation, and even as racist information. It's the old hate speech / misinformation twofer that the government had, but now most of our intelligence agencies believe the lab leak theory is the most likely cause of the virus. So why would we ever trust the government to tell us what's true and what isn't, much less what is hateful and what isn't? I am not asking you to defend hate speech. By all means, we should call it out when we see it. But I'm saying we should all defend everyone's right to have the wrong opinion, even if it's a hateful opinion. We should protect everyone's right to free speech, no matter how repulsing it may be. Because if we don't legally protect speech we hate, we don't actually believe in free speech. If we keep giving the government more and more power to define what's acceptable to say, don't be surprised when your opinions become illegal. The real threat to the First Amendment isn't a lone gunman, even though I fear that he and other violent people like him have made people seriously reconsider speaking their minds in public, and that's an absolute shame. But it's people like Pam Bondi in positions of power who want to use the state's power to go after those she disagrees with, or those that hurt her boss's feelings. And there are a lot of people cheering her on. It should be really obvious to anyone with eyes and ears that she and others in the administration are just imitating their boss who doesn't care about the First Amendment.